Hey World History, this is Miss Corey. Welcome to U12-L2, Basics of the Scientific Revolution. So, learning targets. Students can identify the major intellectual and scientific developments of the 17th and 18th century Europe. We'll talk more about the intellectual in the next video and describe the regional and global influences on the European scientific revolution and Enlightenment. Enlightenment will be more next video, and assess their impact on global society. So your job, you're going to watch this Edpuzzle, stuff it in blue text, so questions in blue text or questions I want you to answer directly on the Edpuzzle. Make sure you're following along with your study guide. Anything that's highlighted in red text is going to be an important concept on your study guide, so make sure you're writing those down. And of course, if you have questions, email me or come to office hours. So just a reminder, so with blue text questions, when it comes to lecture videos that I make, okay, so those are ones with me in it, or you hear my voice or whatever, the blue text questions that I have you answer directly on the Edpuzzle, I'm not necessarily grading if those are right or wrong. I'm just grading it if you give an educated guess. So if you don't take a guess, or if you say some real wacky answer, that's where you might get points lost. But as long as you're giving an educated guess, you're good. So remember, I do read every single one of your responses when it comes to Edpuzzles. So questions on Edpuzzles from other sources, so from like other YouTube channels, Crash Course, History Channel, BBC, PBS, those ones I'm typically grading if you do get the questions right or wrong. So as you probably noticed by now, they're all multiple choice. You usually get 3 or 4 choices to pick from, and I do grade those if they are correct or incorrect. Okay, so we'll have some of those this unit. There's actually, I think there's 4 of them. There's 2 crash courses, and then there's 2 videos I took from PBS. So, all right, let's get started with today, though. When you hear names like Galileo Galilei, Isaac Newton, Johannes Kepler, Nicholas Copernicus, what comes to your mind? So we're going to learn about all of them today, but yes, they're all very famous European scientists, and I guarantee that in your high school career so far, you have learned about at least one of them, okay? So let's talk about the scientific revolution. So like I said, all those scientists were part of the scientific revolution in Europe. And the scientific revolution is when scholars would challenge traditional ways of thinking of the natural world. So the scientists would challenge and use the scientific method to prove or disprove teachings of the church. And this occurred in the early 1500s into the late 1600s, even in a little bit into the 1700s as well. So the scientific revolution really started during the Renaissance era, and that's where there was more flow of people around the world. So more people were traveling to Africa, Asia, and the Americas from Europe, and that led to the changing of ideas among different cultures. So, for example, Arabic numerals, so those are the symbols that we use for numbers today, so like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, came from the Middle East and North Africa. Surgical tools like the syringe, forceps, and surgical hooks came from the Arab countries, and mechanical clock design was first introduced in China, and it was usually powered by flowing water or liquid mercury. All right, let's talk about our first scientist. That would be Nicholas Copernicus. So he was alive from 1473 to 1543. He was actually a Polish priest. So back in the ancient Greek days, astronomers thought that the sun was the center of the solar system, which they were correct. But during the rise of Christianity, it was believed that the Earth was the center of the solar system, which is incorrect. So Copernicus studied planetary motion for 25 years, and he did conclude that the planets did revolve around the sun. Okay, so that would be this here, where like the yellow is the sun. Okay, you got the Earth in blue, and then Mars in red. And the Catholic Church thought that the Earth would be blue, and then the sun goes around the Earth, and then Mars kind of did a loop-de-doop around Earth. All right, so being a priest, he knew the Catholic Church would reject his ideas, so that's why he didn't publish his studies until the very last year of his life. Today, we know this theory as heliocentric. So helio meaning sun, centric meaning center. You put them together, means that the sun is in the center of the solar system. Johannes Kepler. So he was alive from 1571 to 1630. So he kind of got like the fame, but it was really him studying his teacher's work that led him to these famous equations that then led him to fame. So he studied his math teacher's calculations of planetary motion. So his teacher, Tycho Brahe, who died back in 1601, he was the one that really influenced Johannes Kepler's math formulas. And Johannes Kepler concluded with the math equation for planetary motion. And it also supported the heliocentric theory. And he discovered that planets move more in an elliptical orbit and not perfect circles. So you can see here, they move more in like an oval shape. All right, Galileo Galilei. So he was alive from 1564 to 1642. He's very famous because he was an astronomer, and he actually built his own telescopes using his own glass lenses. And you can see here is one of his telescopes here that is in a museum, and I forgot where. But yeah, that's actually his telescope. So he wrote a book called The Starry Messenger, and in that book he announced that Jupiter has 4 moons. He also found that the sun had a dark spot and that the moon had a very rough, uneven surface. So ancient Greek philosophers such as Aristotle believed that the planets were smooth because they didn't have telescopes good enough to actually see the surface of the planet. So this was a pretty revolutionary idea that Galileo Galilei discovered, that the moon had an uneven surface. And then all of his observation also supported heliocentrism. So the Catholic Church was super duper mad at Galileo for all these kind of revolutionary scientific ideas, especially shunned the idea of heliocentrism. And Galileo was devastated. He was a very devout Catholic. So he went on trial and he was forced to read a confession in front of the Catholic Church that his supporting of heliocentrism was incorrect. Okay? So Galileo thought he was very defeated. He wasn't wrong. And he went under a house arrest until he died in 1642. And it was not until 1992, so 32 years ago, that the Catholic Church actually acknowledged that Galileo was correct. All right, so Isaac Newton is one of the most famous scientists. So here's kind of a little brain jogger. What do you know about Isaac Newton? So he's famous for kind of a lot of things. One of the kind of the stories, which is still kind of attested if it's true or not, that like an apple fell on his head and he's like, oh my gosh, gravity is the force of like the earth. Anyway, so he was alive from 1643 to 1727, and he studied math and physics at Cambridge University. So Newton believed that all objects were affected equally by some sort of force. And he also believed the same force caused motion of the planets, which he was correct. So this led to the discovery of the law of universal gravitation. And what the law of universal gravitation is that every object in the universe attracts other objects, and that the degree of attraction depends on both mass and distance. He's also very famous for Newton's laws of motions, like the first law, where like an object in motion will remain in motion unless acted by an outside force. Second law, force equals mass times acceleration. And the third law, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. I'm sure you all have learned about this probably like 9th grade science? All right, so let's wrap it up for today. Today we talked about the scientific revolution, Nicholas Copernicus, heliocentrism, Johannes Kepler, Galileo Galilei, and Isaac Newton. So next up, you're going to watch U12-L2, Basics of Enlightenment. That's another ed puzzle by me. If you have any questions, comments, or want to learn more, email us. We are here to help you. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. Bye.